So right now I'm deep within the throes of editing Second Service, which is about 45% complete, by the way. So I don't have time to make a traditional vlog post right now, complete with fancy graphics and carefully curated movie clips. But I did want to give you a more substantial post than my typical minute-and-a-half update on my progress. So today I'm giving you 9 lessons I learned while shooting a no-budget indie flick. This post is going to consist of little more than a talking head, but on the plus side, I will be in costume the entire time. I spent a month putting this costume together and I kind of forgot to make any actual Halloween plans. Lesson number 1. Don't write something you could make. Write something you must make. When I first decided I was going to make an independent film, I was tempted to just write something. Anything, so long as it pitched well and it didn't cost too much money to make. But I feel like the independent film market is already kind of glutted with projects like that. Competent films made by very talented filmmakers, which nevertheless only seem to exist because the filmmakers felt they had to work on something. Don't get me wrong, I don't begrudge anyone for rounding out their reel with some competent work. But for me, a person who considers himself a writer above all else, it was important for me to wait until I had a script that I would be happy to shoot even if I had the budget to shoot something else. That's what I think all the best no-budget productions have in common. You get the sense that the directors would have made this film even if they had the budget for some big studio project. I think Chris Nolan said it best.
And I've always felt very strongly that every film you do, you can't ever view it as a stepping stone to making another film. You have to really enjoy the film for what it is and just do that.
Lesson number 2. Have some savings stored up. No budget doesn't really mean no budget. While it's true I didn't spend any money on talent or crew, every day of shooting had plenty of other associated costs. Props, transportation, food for the cast and crew, it all adds up. And I was lucky enough to only have to pay to film in one location. Then of course there was the initial investment of all my equipment. I had about $1,000 worth of gear before we started production. That was good enough for vlogging, but I really wanted to step it up a notch for my feature film debut. So I bought additional lighting equipment, a better microphone, extra batteries, a better SD card, boom poles, C-stands, a dolly track for the camera, all of which came to about $1,500. So my total production costs at this point were about $2,500. The last big expense that I had wasn't actually associated with production, but it was still something I needed to think about nonetheless. I had to rearrange my work schedule so that I'd have time to edit the film. All told, this no-budget film cost me about $5,000, which is something you should take into consideration when you plan your own. Lesson number 3. Get somebody to do sound. Audiences are actually far more forgiving of mediocre video than they are mediocre audio. As such, you really ought to have somebody on set whose job it is to think of nothing but the sound. Somebody to monitor audio input levels, to operate the boom mic, to turn off the AC in the corner, and to inform the director that a retake is necessary because of the Coast Guard helicopter circling overhead.
But they would have had to have been on the force a lot longer than I was.
You were on the force?
Cut.
Motherfucker.
Oh, biplane.
Lesson number 4. Keep watching movies that inspire you. Following was my main inspiration for Second Service. I don't mean to say that it was my inspiration for the story or the tone, but just the idea that I could make a movie without any financial backing. Screening no-budget films throughout the production helped me in other ways too. I had this tendency to pre-visualize my film in ways that really could only be accomplished with a big budget. So watching no-budget films like Following helped me recalibrate my expectations. And it did me good to hear Chris Nolan talk about overcoming the same production problems that I was facing. It gave me hope. Made me feel like I was on the right track. Lesson number 5. Don't set any scenes in a library. We had no trouble getting permission to shoot in bars, in barbershops, in public parks, in friends' apartments, in historic high-rises overlooking the Chicago River. But libraries? Getting permission to shoot in a library is like pulling teeth. From someone without teeth. Lesson number 6. If you think it's hard when nobody's helping you, imagine how hard it would be if somebody were trying to stop you. This became a major motivating mantra for me all throughout production. Sometimes, when the shoot got difficult, like when I had trouble securing a particular location for filming, I would start to feel real sorry for myself. It's so hard to location scout on my own. This would be so much easier if someone just helped me. How come I have to do this particular task all by myself? But then I thought, you know what's even harder than having nobody help you? Having somebody actively oppose you. If you can't imagine what that might look like, ask anybody who's less privileged than you. There are plenty of people out there who get their kicks by telling other people they're not allowed to follow their dreams. I, thankfully, didn't experience any of that, and I'm very grateful. That realization was very motivating. So the question isn't who's going to let you. The question is who's going to stop you. Lesson number 7. Keep a roll of gaffer tape, an extension cord, a pair of pliers, and a rubber gripper in your equipment bag at all times. You could thank me later. Lesson number 8. Never wait until you're on set to try something for the first time. If you know you're supposed to get your very first slow motion shot on the next day of filming, don't wait until you're on set that day to figure out how to shoot in slow motion. This sounds obvious, but it still needs to be said, because you'll be tempted to just trust your instincts and figure it out later when you're too tired to do proper prep. And when you do that, you're just begging to mess it up. It's like that old Benjamin Franklin quote, "An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of reshoots." Lesson number 9. Don't panic about panicking. There came a point, about halfway during the shoot, when I was too far along to remember why I began, and not far along enough to see where the end was. In short, I was smack dab in the middle. And this was by far the most terrifying point in the production. I had to learn to compartmentalize, to take it one day at a time, to make a list each day of 3 things I was going to do to get ready for the next day of shooting. Sometimes, too much perspective can become detrimental. If you can't handle picturing all the coming steps, just picture the next one, and keep moving forward. So there you have it, 9 lessons I learned while shooting a no-budget indie film. They're certainly not the only 9 lessons I learned, but then this probably isn't the last of these videos that I'm going to make. Till then, I'll be in my bunk.